Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Build Your Copywriting Business. Hey, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So today is kind of a special episode in that we did not plan it in advance. We just finished up an interview with a confidence coach, and great interview, very interesting. But as soon as we finished up, Kate and I started chatting, and we thought, you know what? We want to talk about this more. So we hopped back into Zoom, hopped back into our audio recording, and said, let's dig in. Let's talk about this a little bit more, because she and I have been in this industry for so long, and we've been working with our students for so long that I think we have some extra insight that we definitely want to make sure that we share.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think one of the first things to start out with is that I actually added a module about building, or added a coaching about, or added a course in the CCA course about overcoming fears, overcoming blocks. And it's in our first module too. And I say again and again, and we all say again and again, you will come up against this fear, you will come up against resistance. But I think a lot of people are still kind of surprised when they do. Why do you think that is?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think we talk about it a lot that as adults, we don't tend to learn new things as often. We're not as used to taking risks. We're not as used to doing something that's outside of our comfort zones. We're very much used to, get up, go to work if that's, for most of us what we do, come home, do some dinner, go to bed, do it all over again. So there's a routine built in that we don't shake it up that often. And when you're starting something like learning how to become a copywriter and you come from a wildly different background, or even not, it's something new for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to make that transition, and that transition phase is inevitably awkward. So because of that, because we don't necessarily realize or remember what that's like to go from a comfort zone to that transition to then, where you want to be, it can be very confusing because you have all these, not to get mushy, but you do have emotions that come up that you don't remember how to deal with. You don't often feel these things because you don't often put yourself in this place of transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. When we're little, not even little, but like in high school and college and
even in 20s,
you are constantly learning new things, and you are used to not knowing stuff. You're used to going, I don't know how to do this. I guess I'm going to have to figure it out, or I'm going to have to look to someone to teach me. And I think for some reason, and at some point we get to this point in our adulthoods where we expect to just know everything, or we just assume that we know everything. And I agree. I think when we come up to that point where we're like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm brand new to this. I think in some ways it kind of comes as intellectually, we know that we don't know something. But I think that when we come into something and we're not immediately adept at it, that we're sometimes surprised at that. And that throws us for a loop, because we've lost that, or we've forgotten the steps of learning, the coming into something and being like, okay, I don't know anything about that, and I'm okay with that. Because, we always say nobody's born knowing how to write copy, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody who has ever wanted to write copy has started in the same place, not knowing anything about it. So when people are starting and not knowing anything about it, that's fantastic. They're in the right place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first things, and I know you were chatting about this, is the first step to overcoming some of these issues, these barriers, these roadblocks, is to really start with your why. Why am I doing this? Because if you don't have a good reason for doing it, you're not going to have the motivation. You're not going to take the action you need to take. It's going to be very easy to keep on keeping on and stay in the place that you're in. So literally writing that down, tape it to your monitor if you have to, tape it in a number of places. Just when those things start to come up, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I want this. Whether it is spending more time with my child, so I'm going to build this career so I can leave my full-time job and do that. Or it's, I've always wanted to travel the world and I want a career that allows me to work remotely, or even just hitting a financial goal because I want to earn an extra $2,000. So this year, my family and I can take that trip that we've been wanting to take for, probably 13 months now because it's 2021.
Oh, yes.
I know I'm there. It's been 2 years since I've had a proper vacation and I'm about ready to just, so whatever that why is, and, you know, I'm going to share this example for mine. You know, Shannon, a coach of ours in the CCA, asked a fantastic question of me of why I went from freelancing full time to working with Nicki again. Why would you work with Nicki?
Why would you do that?
It's been, you know, probably over 8 years since we last worked together. And so I was in this phase this summer of feeling like, I know I want something else. Could I keep freelance? It was my best revenue year to date. And I knew that in July. That's insane. So what would make me say, sayonara, great career? And it's not even that, because I know I can always freelance. I'm still freelancing on the side right now.
Yeah.
I can always go back full time if I really want to. But my big decision was, okay, what do I want? What is my why? I want to grow. I need a new challenge. I need something to push myself outside my comfort zone. And so my why became something that's going to let me develop and stretch myself, which very much now in a position that I am stretching myself, you know, doing things that I've never done before. And so I know that's a little bit of a mushier why than financial goal, a hard and fast financial goal, or, you know, spending more time with family. But for me, it was very much, this is my reason now for making this switch. And did it take, you know, yes, I feel like, again, this transition period, my confidence was at an all-time high. No, it wasn't an all-time high, knowing I was stepping into a role that was going to push me to grow, and that I wasn't going to be, and still not, you know, perfect or acing everything, or being comfortable in it, because that's what that transition and that growth is. It's pushing yourself to get to that next point where you want to be. But you only do that by taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really smart. That big why is something that sustains you when the initial motivation wears off. You know, I think a lot of people, you have that initial motivation. You think, all right, great. You know, you hear the student success stories and you think, oh my gosh, I finally found a career that I want to do. And you get started, and then inevitably the motivation wanes. And I say inevitably because it always does. You can, if there's one thing you can depend on, is that motivation will disappear, because it is not by its nature designed to be something that sticks around. It's a short period of excitement and then it disappears. And I think that, and it can come back in various phases. But I think that sometimes people think, when the motivation disappears, that means that, oh, I'm not supposed to do it after all, or, oh, maybe I don't want to do it, or anything like that. The only thing that, when that motivation disappears, the only thing that means is that, okay, now you passed out of that initial motivation phase. Everybody starts out there like, yes, I'm so excited, I'm so motivated, yes. But no one stays in that like initial high excitement motivation phase. Eventually they move into the, all right, I don't really feel like doing this today phase. But the key is that, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but the key is to keep taking action anyway, because then that gets you through the days that are like, oh, I don't feel like it, to the days when you do, you're a little bit more excited about doing it. But when you are depending on that initial motivation and expecting that initial motivation to carry you through, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, because by its very nature, that initial motivation is going to disappear. You know, I make the comparison a lot of a gym membership. And I probably do that a lot because I used to work for a health club and used to sell health club memberships. But long time ago. But you know, when anybody joins a gym, they are so excited, everything is shiny and new. They're going to get new workout clothes. They're going to have a plan. They're going to work out every day. They're going to lose 20 pounds, or they're going to gain 20 pounds of muscle, or whatever. And that initial excitement, when you're selling health club memberships, that initial excitement is great. And the problem is, though, is that most people expect that initial excitement to go to the gym and to work out is going to stick with them. But in a couple of days, when their alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and they have to go into the gym versus staying in bed or getting up and having some eggs and bacon first, they let that lack of motivation mean that they don't take action. Go ahead.
I would think another big thing that prevents people from taking action too, and from feeling that motivation, is getting feedback. I think it's very motivating when you feel like, oh, I'm really good at this, to keep going and to say, oh, I'm knocking it out of the park left and right. But inevitably, with anything, you're going to face some feedback, and copywriting especially, you're going to get feedback, and it's not all going to be glowing. Is some of it going to be very simple and minor? Yeah. But the key, I feel like, there is a lot of people then get stuck. They get feedback that feels like, I don't know where to go now. Like, I thought I was on the right track, and now this makes it seem like I'm not. And so what I see a lot too with it starts with like the tone guide exercise. That's one of the first ones we see and people do in the group. But to keep moving, you're never going to learn something new or have new inputs for how you're viewing something or approaching something until you take an action that gives you more information to look at it from a different angle. So whether that is posting it in the group, what you have so far, or, moving on to a next exercise and coming back to that later. I think some people feel like, oh, I have to get through one thing to go to the other. And yes, start with, step 1, 2, 3, but you can also go back to 2, and that's not backward progress. You're going to be looking at step 2 now with a fresh perspective from everything you learned from step 3 or 4. There's only so much you can do in a moment. And when you get stuck there or frozen, you need to do something else to be able to see that from a fresh perspective. And that could even be that's why we talk about like building in time to walk away from your computer, because even that act allows you to come back with a very different take on what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it kind of comes back to that element of expecting to be able to ace it right away, right? They're called exercises for a reason, called action sheets for a reason, because you have to take action and you have to stretch yourself a little bit, push yourself. And yeah, some of them you might, if you're going through the course, some of them you might be like, yeah, wow, I nailed that one. I found that one super easy. And then you get to another one and it's challenging. I think that we all have to be open to that novice place, that where we can sit there and go, okay, I don't know everything, and that's okay, but I can learn, and I am open to learning. And I think that this kind of gets in then to the comparing yourself to other people, right? That one of the great things about our Facebook group is that we have so many like fantastic, supportive, talented students and coaches in there, willing to give feedback and willing to provide support and all that kind of thing. But the other side of that coin, it can be very easy for students to go in and say, oh, well, these other people know so much more than I do, or they're so much further ahead than I am, or they are not having confidence challenges, or they don't have imposter syndrome, or anything like that. And that's just, it's not the case, right? I mean, we're in our own heads and we assume that we are the only person who's having this experience, when in actuality, everybody else has had those experiences as well. They might not be having it at this moment, but I guarantee that if we went into the group now and we said, okay, who's ever had a crisis of confidence? Literally every single person, including us, would say, oh yeah, absolutely. But just because you're not seeing someone posting about it doesn't mean they haven't had that experience, or quite frankly, doesn't mean they're not having that experience right now. On top of the
Absolutely.
fact that we have students who have been with us for a couple years now and are making lots and lots of money. And good for them. But we have students that literally joined 5 minutes ago. So to come in and to think, oh, there's so much further ahead of me. Well, first of all, what is the spectrum of where you are on the path? It's all so relative, but also yeah, they've been doing it for longer. So it makes sense that they would know things that you don't know yet, or that they have taken steps that you haven't taken yet. It's really being comfortable with the idea of I'm on a journey, I'm on a path, and I'm learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an element of, I want to say competition, and I say that more as human nature to feel like you want to be the best at what you do. You're there to learn, but you also are like, oh, I want to be. And so even if you don't identify that as feeling, no, I'm not competing with them. No, I'm not competitive. There's still this element of
comparison, at least.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Which is a competitive. There's a competitive aspect to it. There inevitably is. I've seen beautiful websites that are, 10 times better than my own. And I think, oh, do I need that to it? And for a minute, there is that aspect. And then it's like, no, good for them. They're doing something completely different than I am. They have a need to have a beautiful website. Maybe they're selling something on the website. My website is serving its purpose. It has its portfolio. It's worked for me and my goals. And so remembering, what are my goals? Because I don't know anyone else's goals. I also don't know if their website's effective for them. So why am I even wasting any time thinking about it? And I know that's easy to say, because you can get inspired from looking at other copywriters and looking at what they're doing. But I think the moment it goes from inspiration to feeling like, oh, I have to do an Instagram, and I have to be on Instagram Live, and I have to do a Facebook page, and I have to do this, and I'm never going to be, you don't have to do any of that. And I think in today's world, especially, we have this influencer culture. And I mean that not just in, obviously in the social media sense, but I think it's kind of permeated a lot of other areas of life where we don't need to let it do that. You don't need to have a presence. You don't need to, I mean, you do need your online portfolio, yes, but beyond that, you've got to refocus on what your why is, but also what you need to do to get there. And what you need to get to your endpoint is not necessarily, and I guarantee it's very different than what someone else needs to do to get to their endpoint. So to your point in the group, not only are people at different levels and different stages of their careers, but their careers are different. Yes, we're all copywriters, but we all are working with different people and have different needs to meet with our copywriting work.
Yeah, it reminds me of, you remember in elementary school when teachers would say keep your eyes on your own work or keep your eyes on your own paper. It's really same kind of thing, because it's really easy to be like, oh, what's going on? What's this person doing? And you can spend all of your time doing that, but keep your eyes on your own work. When the majority of your time is focused on what you need to do and the action that you're taking, you'll get there. We always say that you can finish a marathon by taking baby steps, as long as you keep taking those steps. If you stop taking the steps, then no, you'll never get there. But you can take the tiniest possible steps and you will still eventually get to the end, get to where you want to be. You just have to keep taking that action.
And taking the actions again, not feeling like you have to take an action because someone else took that same action. I think the commonalities with us are that we all need to practice copywriting. And then after that, how we pitch clients is relatively, similar, the way we teach it, but who we're pitching and how we work with them and what we do after that is going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, and I think we'll give you the parameters. We'll give you, here are the questions to ask, all that kind of stuff. But it's true, your personality is going to dictate how you work with clients and how you put yourself out there on social media, if you do. Yeah, that's a great point.
And I think people hate vague answers. And I think sometimes you want, tell me exactly what to do, which to some extent we do. It is, here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5.
Mhm.
But within all of that, if you're just following the steps and not considering your needs and goals, which we cannot tell you,
Mhm.
will you get somewhere? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you follow just the steps, but without that reflection of what you're doing and your purpose,
Mhm.
you might not get where you want to go.
You can't get where you want to go if you don't know where you
Right.
want to go, right?
Right.
Which
Yeah.
gets back to your point about the big why. Do you want a full-time freelance career, or do you want something a little bit different? Do you want part-time, or do you want on staff, or do you want it's you can make it look however you want your career to look, but you have to at least have some idea of where you're heading and why you're heading that direction. Now you can change at any point. You can, if you thought you wanted to be full-time freelance and you realize that actually you want to do it part-time, that's a possibility as well. I think one of the things that we forget in the shuffle as we're thinking to ourselves, oh, I wish I had more confidence, or, oh, I feel like an imposter, or yesterday I was feeling great and today I'm not feeling great. What's wrong with me? First of all, nothing. Like I was saying, you will feel that crisis of confidence. We talk a lot about a resistance in our group and in the course. That will come up. The good thing about resistance is resistance always comes up in response to a direction that pushes us out of our comfort zone, or that's taking us out of our comfort zone. And the good thing is if it's taking you out of your comfort zone, it's the direction you should be heading. So when resistance comes up, it's actually generally a sign that you are in the right direction, because everything worth it in our lives is outside of our comfort zones. Literally everything that makes our lives bigger or more fulfilling or happier or anything like that is outside of our comfort zone. Having kids, getting married, starting a new career, moving to a new country, or whatever, it's all outside of our comfort zone. Maybe in retrospect, we can think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. But I guarantee that in that moment, when you were thinking about moving or getting married or having a child or something, it was scary and it was outside of your comfort zone. So when that resistance comes up, and which we talk about in the group, how it's very insidious, and it will come up with all kinds of sneaky ways to be like, you know what, you worked so hard yesterday. Why don't you just take the rest of today off? You deserve, go sit down on the sofa, watch some Netflix, which is not to say that sometimes, yeah, you do need some time off, but when your resistance is getting in the way of you actually making forward progress, or saying things like, well, you know what, maybe you weren't meant to do this. How bad was your full-time job anyway? Maybe you should just go back. The kinds of things when the voice in your head is directing you away from your big why, away from the direction you want to head, that's a good sign that is resistance. That other voice in your head, which is a lot quieter, the one that goes, well, I mean, you did, Nicki and Kate said some parts of it would be hard. There are going to be some elements that are challenging, but you did a good job. You put in some good work today. It wasn't perfect, but you did a good job, and tomorrow's another day. That's the voice you want to focus on,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's hard for us to hear that voice. I've met people who are like, I don't think I have that voice. I guarantee you do have it. It's just probably very, very, very quiet. But when that resistance comes up, I think a lot of people, when that resistance comes up and they feel quote unquote stuck, which that phrase makes me crazy. And don't get me wrong, I've said it, but when you say I am stuck, you're putting yourself in this permanent position, even versus I feel stuck today, or I feel a little blocked today, or whatever. But the I am stuck is such a permanent place. And it sounds like such a little thing, but we need to be really careful about the words that come out of our mouth.
Yeah. I think that I'm stuck goes with that. I don't know what next step to take, which makes you feel stuck. I'm stuck because I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10,
you do know.
They know. Everyone, exactly. It might be pitching. I see it a lot at the pitching phase of like, I don't know what to do next. And let me go get distracted and work on my portfolio some more and work on this some more. And once you start trying to make things that are they're fine. They're great. They're used,
Mhm.
your portfolio's in good place. Is it perfect? No, nothing ever is. But when you start trying to perfect things,
Mhm.
that's when
Resistance.
yeah, exactly. And so you
Mhm.
say, I don't know what to do. No, you do. It's pitching. It's that you don't want to do it.
Mhm. You're
Which
afraid to
goes
do it. Mhm.
exactly, which goes along with your favorite phrase of, I can't. I
Oh, it
can't.
makes me crazy. I can't, because that's another permanent state. I am in the state of I cannot do that. There is almost literally nothing in this world that we can't do. I can't fly. Okay, well, no, I can't. I don't have wings, but I can get in an airplane. Like, I can't send this email. Of course you can. Are you capable of doing it? Yes. Are you afraid of doing it? Maybe that's also yes, or maybe, but it's I whenever we see it in the group, I always try to dissuade people, and I would strongly recommend that anyone listening take I can't out of your vocabulary. You can say, I'm challenged by, or I'm struggling a little bit with, or I'm wondering how to. I can't versus how can I is so much of a more empowering place to be. I can't get myself to send this pitch email today. Okay, instead of saying I can't, how about turning it to how can I get myself to send this pitch email today? When you ask your brain questions like that, your brain is primed to come up with answers, and it starts answering, and it starts going, well, you know what? Okay, let's do this. You have the email in your inbox. Let's count down from 5, and then at 5 you're going to press send.
Mhm.
It's your brain's going to come up with all kinds of different options for you to take that action that previously you would have said you can't.
Yeah, so it reminds me of a book I'm reading right now about willpower and how willpower is kind of BS. We only have an infinite amount each day. So if you are depleted and then you say, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow, we're not going to get the things we need to get done. We need to change our situation so that we're able to take the actions we need to take and not rely on this thing called willpower, which isn't going to get us where we want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, willpower is kind of the other side of that magical coin. I'm going to rely on willpower to get stuff done. Other side of the coin is I'm going to feel so inspired by my motivation. Well, neither of those are things that you can control, right? If you're waiting for motivation to inspire you to take action, then you might be waiting indefinitely. Or if you're waiting for your willpower to kick in and get you to do it, you, by that same token, could be waiting indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting for things that are out of your control to enable you to do work is setting yourself up for failure. Waiting for motivation, waiting for willpower, waiting for confidence. That's another thing that we talk a lot about, is waiting to overcome self-doubt or that kind of thing. If I'm sure I've said it multiple times before on the podcast, and frankly, I'll continue to say it. But you don't get confident before you take the action. You become confident by taking the action. The confidence comes by you taking the action. So if you're sitting here and waiting to send your pitch emails, or waiting to reach out to a designer to collaborate on projects, or waiting to do any of that, waiting for confidence, waiting for willpower, waiting for motivation, you are going to be waiting indefinitely. You can't count on to rely on things that are outside of your control to help you to take action is a recipe for disaster and frustration and any other number of negative things.
Yeah, we need that on t-shirts. You get confident by taking action.
I should research it though. I'm sure I heard it from someone else and I'd put it on a t-shirt with my name on it. Someone's going to be like, yeah, excuse me,
Copyright.
You did not come up with that.
Yeah. I think one of the ways though to get through this, because taking a big action like sending a pitch can feel like a really big deal to people, or doing a web page for a client can feel like a really big deal. And it is. A lot of these things are bigger projects. So best way to kind of lower the stress, lower the confidence issue is get out something on that paper, whether it is, I'm going to write the subject line for my pitch, or I'm going to write an outline for my webpage for my client. And it doesn't even have to be the words yet. It can just be like, this section's going to be the headline. I always start. I know a lot of people have copy templates that they probably just copy and paste and use. Oh, this is an email I can shuffle around. I always start because it gets me in the mindset. It's a good first step for me to write subject line. I'm probably going to have a headline. Snippet too. Didn't mean to skip that. Body.
Yeah.
CTA from line, even if I'm feeling really unmotivated one day or, lacking like, oh, I don't know where to start with this project. And I'll tell you, there are lots of first drafts where I'm not confident. And I know my first draft, I'm not going to feel confident about. That's the point of a first draft. I would never send that to a client. So I start with the outline. Okay, now I've got my copy doc. Whew, I did it. Now here's some pieces I've been thinking about of like, this is probably going to be the call to action. I often start there and work my way back up. Start with the body, start riffing on some things that I know need to go in it. Ooh, this is a good line. Maybe that is the headline. Move it up there. Keep writing. Okay, maybe it's not. I'm going to move it back. So not feeling like I'm going to finish something that day is really what helps me, because I know, okay, I'm going to sit that aside and then I'm going to come back to it probably tomorrow. And then I'm like, ooh, here's all this stuff to then jump off from. And I feel a lot more confident in my second draft. And by the, third or however many it ends up being for the project, I'm ready to then send it to my client and feel like, yes, like this is it. So same thing with a pitch, write that subject line, write the first draft. If you don't hit send that day, that's okay.
Yeah.
But taking those steps is what's going to get you from point A to point B. You don't have to do it in one fell swoop of, I have to start with nothing and I have to go with a finished product. And that has to happen within however much time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like big projects and or things that really take you outside of your comfort zone, like sending your first pitches, that it can become so overwhelming that you can't even conceive of how to attack it. Like so I moved into my new house but I had to pack up my old house, and the idea of like, okay, today we will pack up I will pack up the house, royal we, that too big to understand. It makes me sit on my sofa and go, oh, versus, okay, we're going to do kitchen cabinets first. I'm going to open up the kitchen cabinets.
The worst one.
Oh, that's pretty terrible.
You realize how much glassware and cutting boards you have.
Where did I accumulate all that stuff? But it's the breaking it down into smaller project is always going to make it feel more manageable. And one of the things that we talk about when you have that feeling of being stuck, you of course are never truly stuck, but when you have that, like, I'm overwhelmed, one of the things that I strongly advocate, because we all hit this at some point, right? Where we just can't make forward, we have trouble making forward progress, is
Caught the can't. I like that.
Is to break things down into absurdly tiny steps. And I think sometimes people hear absurdly tiny steps and they don't understand how much I want to emphasize the term absurdly. The steps have to be so tiny that you're like, that's a joke. That's got to be a joke. I can't put that on my to-do list. I mean, when it comes to sending a pitch email, for example, first step on your to-do list should be open your inbox. That's step one. And I'm being absolutely literally true. Absolutely. That was a weird thing to say. Being absolutely literal, which is, I'm being literal. But you need to break these down into steps that are so tiny that they don't kick up any resistance. Like, is opening your inbox a step that you will have to take to eventually send your pitch email? Yeah, It is. So break these, open up a new email. That's step 2. When you break it down into steps that are so easy, they don't kick up any resistance. When you break, I open your inbox. Well, okay, I can do that. It's absurd. It's absurd that would be a step, because it's so easy. It's like, well, okay, yes, I can do that. But when you break it down to these steps and you start doing some of these steps, they're tiny. It's like we were talking about baby steps in marathon. They're tiny steps, but they're still steps that are necessary to get you where you want to go. And taking these steps is taking action. And sometimes it will help you build momentum. So you start taking these little steps and you start moving a little bit faster and taking bigger steps. Great. However, and I can tell you there are plenty of times when I don't get to the bigger steps. I have to take the tiny steps all the way through. But if I take the tiny steps, eventually I will send that pitch email, or I will do whatever it is that I need to do. But when you break it down to these absurdly tiny steps, and believe me, if it at all kicks up any resistance, if you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's too big. Break it down even smaller so that it's like, all right, it's almost harder to not do it. Yes, I can open up my inbox. Break it down into these tiny steps. I mean, it could literally be like, okay, type the first letter of their email address, type the second letter, break it down so that it's so easy. It's like harder not to do it, because once you take enough of these, you will either build up that motivation, or excuse me, not motivation, build up that momentum and do more, or you'll just eventually take enough of these tiny steps that you've done it. And then boom, surprise, you're on the other side of your comfort zone and you did it. It's probably one of the most underutilized tactics to get yourself to take action, because the only way to move forward, to get past that resistance, to get past that feeling of self-doubt, to get past that lack of confidence, is to take action.
Facing those fears, because a lot of it, and you'll hear Cherie talk about it, is that fear. And the second we can admit that what are we afraid of? Some people find it helpful to speak it out loud, write it down, whatever it is. But okay, so what do I need to do? Is that true? Is this really a valid fear? And I think a lot of us will be like, yeah, of course it's valid. I'm feeling it. But being honest with yourself to say, okay, the likelihood of this, but also what's the alternative? If I take these actions and I send out the pitch, what is your worst fear? That they come back and tell you that, no, you're horrible and they would never hire you? Great. We always say, like, that's obviously not a human being you want to work with.
Yeah, that's a crummy person. Be lucky you didn't get them as a client.
I can't imagine if there's a worse fear, I don't know what it would be in that situation. With your first client, the worst case, they absolutely hate all of the copy and you need to rewrite it. Looking at that, and I know it's hard. I've had clients rip up copy, and we always say creative brief, and that's probably, where it stemmed from, but it happens. Was it a reflection on my work? No, I think it was maybe a miscommunication and whatnot. But even if it was, okay, great. This is an opportunity to move forward, to take this feedback and to become better at what I want to do. That's for anyone. You are going to have moments where, think about like pro athletes. They have games where they bomb. If they gave up after that, they might not be in the Hall of Fame or whatever. And name any one of those people. I'm sure they've had a game where they just bombed. Tom Brady going to his whatever number Super Bowl. There have been games we've all watched that he's bombed. And you're like, what happened to Tom? It's one out of a big career. And so that is the instinct. And I have it too. When a client comes back and says something that I don't agree with, is to get defensive and be like, they don't know what they're talking about, which maybe they don't sometimes, or maybe it's like, okay, we just need to have a conversation actually. And a lot of times I get on the call with clients and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. It happened recently with Google ads. They didn't understand why the headlines weren't punchy for Google ads. And I had to explain, well, we can have some punchy options, but they need to be what people are searching for.
Yeah.
So could there be a mix? Yes. And so we walked them through our strategy and why we approached it the way we did. And they were like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And so there are going to be moments like that, but there are also going to be moments of like, okay, I'm going to take this feedback. And as long as I understand why they're asking this, then they're helping make me a better copywriter. How awesome is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's this concept of fear of failure. Failure is not a thing. You know what I mean? Failure implies that you have hit some kind of irrevocable end. And that's the rarity of an irrevocable end in daily life, except for maybe death. But the rarity of an irrevocable end cannot be, making a very complicated sentence.
Very morbid too.
Yeah, right. There are very
Copywriting will not kill
failures.
you.
Copywriting will not
kill you. It will not kill you.
No, but the idea of like, well, I'm afraid of failure, but there is no failure. There's only learning opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you send out, there's a spectrum of possible results, right? You send out 5 pitch emails. One end of the spectrum, maybe all 5 people get back in touch with you and want to work with you. Awesome. Other end of the spectrum, maybe nobody gets back in touch with you, but that doesn't mean that that's a failure. It means that 1, you have opportunities to follow up with people. 2, you have opportunities to explore your pitches and maybe see if there's anything that needs to be tweaked. But there's no failure. Like, well, I'm afraid of failing. Like, what if I can't make it work? I can't make it work as a copywriter. The number of things that go into making it work as a copywriter, there are so many different things that you can tweak. You know, you tweak your pitches, you tweak your website, you tweak your outreach. You started to bug me the number of times I'm saying tweak, quite frankly. But
but also knowing that like one person, yes, might there still be opportunities, and you should look and go to the group and, hey, is there something I can improve here?
mm-hmm.
But one client isn't a data point necessarily for
Mm-hmm.
representative of your greater work.
Yeah.
If you have 5 clients that all say the same thing about, okay, then maybe there's something there. 10,
and that's
yeah,
feedback.
Definitely.
Yeah,
right.
Valuable, like you were saying. Yeah,
right.
Well, the idea of like, I won't be able to make it work as a copywriter. Well, but it's possible. So if it's possible, then you can do it. You know, you might have to change some of the things that you do, change some of your approaches, test things out, do different things, but it's possible, you know. And I think sometimes because it's a dream, right? It's a dream for our new career, a dream of being successful at what we're doing. It's our goal. I think that sometimes we set it up to be something almost unachievable, but it's just a career. You know, I don't think there are many people, maybe there are, but I don't think there are a lot of people who are like, I'll never be able to make it as a veterinarian, you know, or like, what if I fail as a bank teller, you know, like it's still a career. It's a fantastic career. Don't get me wrong, but there are steps that you take. It's not a matter of luck by any
Mm-hmm.
means. It's not, well, he got lucky and he got a fantastic career. Oh, she didn't get lucky and she quote unquote failed. That's not what it is at all. It's not a flip. It's not a flip of the coin, flip of the somewhere in there. You get where I'm saying, but it's not happenstance that dictates whether you are successful and or how successful you are. It all comes down to you being open to learning and to taking the action and to committing to, yes, you will have some off days, but committing to the fact that you're going to have to get a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And there'll be days when you can go right back into your comfort zone, but there have to be days when you push yourself a little bit. And maybe it's absurdly tiny steps, or maybe it's one day you're like, all right, I'm going to put these in my inbox, or I'm going to put these in my send box or in my inbox or whatever. And I'm just going to hit send. I'm just going to take a deep breath and hit send. And sometimes it's really forcing yourself out of there. Or I'm at a networking event, I'm going to go up and talk to this person. Fine, however you want to do it. But if you are taking action, you can get where you want to be. It all comes down to that taking action. You don't have to believe in yourself. You don't have to have complete self-confidence. You don't have to.
You won't, in fact, until you take the action to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And even still, you know, Kate and I would certainly not say that every day we're like, oh, we're perfectly confident. We know exactly what to do at every moment. And every day we are primed to take action on the things that we have to take action on. You know, nobody is perfect. We can still have this conversation with you, knowing that we have to do this for ourselves as well. There are plenty of times, you know, talk about my 2-minute method where I'm like, I have to get this copy written. Okay, all I can give it 2 minutes, 2 minutes of focused work. And then I'll give it another 2 minutes. But, you know, we're not perfect. We're all learning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being comfortable learning and knowing that we have to take the action whether we feel like it or not. And on the days when we really don't feel like it, the best way that I have found is to break it down into those absurdly tiny steps, because you're still They're little itty bitty tiny little steps, but you're still taking action.
And same thing too to the what ifs, because I feel like that's another area where what if this, but what if this, but what if, so we can tell you all day to take action, and then you'll come back with the, but what if, and I say, it's also me, do it in other facets of my life, but what if this, but what if that? The only way to know and to truly know something is to experience it, right? We can tell you what something's going to be like, and that there are nuances. And this is, I feel like, goes back to what I was saying about things being vague, because there are infinite number of ways your discovery call with your client can go. There are infinite number of ways humans can interact. And so when you're interacting with clients, they are humans, and there's just
very
infinite
human
possibilities, which, yes, remember that they're human too.
Yeah.
We're all human. And it honestly helps to remember that they're not, they're just like you and I. It's like celebrities. They're just like us.
They're just like
they
us.
have breakfast. They probably rely on coffee. So remembering though, that those what ifs, I can probably come back with an answer for every one of them. I'm really good at coming back with an answer for everything. I've practiced this skill, and I'm sure people hate it, but that's not going to make anyone necessarily feel better. It happens, I feel like, with taxes for freelancers. It's like, but what if this, but what if that? I can tell you, I've gotten a fine for overpaying, which blows my mind. And I've also gotten a fine for underpaying, both for like $3 and $10 based on, I was still trying to pay. The consequences that you can make up in your mind are largely never going to come to fruition. I think I said this before, of like, there's never going to be a blaze of fire behind you because of the actions you're taking. So keep taking actions until there's a really good reason for you not to, which
even if they do come to fruition, you can't deal with them until you get to that point, right? Yeah. You can't cross a bridge until you get to that bridge. I mean, literally speaking, if you're in your car or you're walking, you can't cross the bridge 2 miles early.
I'm going to tell an anecdote because I feel like this made me think of it. There was a time, and this was a what if scenario I couldn't have predicted. I was in Italy, and because I used to live in Germany, driving, I was on a solo trip. It was great, fantastic. I was coming back home, and the gas station, most gas stations have very much like America, the 91, 93, whatever octane. This particular gas station was very outdated and had a gasolio, benzina verde, and a third, diesel. I think it was appropriately named diesel. So I was like, it's not diesel.
Good. Don't put in diesel.
Yeah. Don't know what the hell benzina verde is. Got to be gasolio. Gasolio is a premium diesel. So my car 3 miles after, and I was doing this because I was like, oh, I want to get it before I go through the Alps in Switzerland. It'll be cheaper here. I was like 3 miles from the Swiss border, where eventually the gas station I went to had normal pumps, but we'll get there. 3 miles from the gas station at a toll booth, I went to pay the toll, barely inched out of the toll booth. I picked the furthest to the left because I like to go on my highway fast. There's like 8 lanes in this toll. Broke down. And I had this moment of like, oh, that had to have been the wrong one. It was a Sunday. Everything shuts down, as people know in Europe on Sundays. Nothing's open. There was one man who did not speak English in the toll booth. I walked across 8 lanes, went into his booth. I was like, that's my car. Got someone on the phone who didn't speak English, said 10 minutes, 10 minutes. I went back to my car, put my safety vest on as you're supposed to. A car came with an arrow, a giant ungodly arrow, basically telling everyone to go around me, go around this fool that is broken down here. One of those gentlemen spoke okay English, and fine. Uncomfortable, obviously, panicking, called my husband saying, I don't know when I'm getting home. Finally, he tells me we're somewhere outside of Como. And I was like, oh, George Clooney. Somehow that made me feel better. So I grasped onto this thread of hope of like, oh, maybe I'll just go see him.
Maybe George and Amal would be just driving
by.
They'll
bail me. Yeah, they'll bail me out. No, that did not happen. I wish that was the story. Eventually a tow truck came. I got in with this tow truck driver, which thank God we just didn't talk. Towed it to a garage where a man who thankfully spoke some German, we could communicate in German, opened up his garage on a Sunday for me, reminded me that Monday was a bank holiday, which meant they were also closed. So I should probably have to go get a hotel. He nicely got his daughter who spoke English, and then they were like, it's going to be €350 or whatever it was, cash only, because Italy. Went to 3 ATMs. My debit card wasn't working, called my bank. They were like, nope, it should be fine. Finally, she just took the card and paid for it. And they actually wrapped it up all within that day. And I got back on the road and hit the gas station, like I mentioned, which had the normal pumps, got my gas, and we're on my way.
Not the
But
gasolio.
Yeah, not gasolio. That's the takeaway. But that whole event, like, that was a what if. After that event, I was like, I can survive almost anything. Like, I would literally got on the train, it felt like, and I was like, I have to be on this and can't get off until my car's back on the road and I can get home. Like, what other option is there? And so if we think of our career like that, of like, I want this, I need this, which I needed my car. If you need copywriting to be your career, get on that train and just start taking those actions you need to take. And you'll get, I mean, I got home the same day, skipped lunch, had some pack of Oreos, thank God. But like, my heart rate's up just thinking about that.
Well, and you know what? I think sometimes too, people go through the what if scenario. They go through the what ifs, hoping that if they think of all possible eventualities, then they'll be okay. If I plan everything that could ever possibly happen, then I'll be okay. But you can't, whether it's in your career, whether it's a solo trip to Italy, you can't possibly plan every eventuality. And that goes both ways too. You can't come up with all the things that might go wrong or might throw you a little bit, but you also can't come up with all the wonderful things. You can't plan in advance all the wonderful serendipitous things that are going to happen, you know, when you are in line
on that trip, and it was such a good moment. Yes. Like, I don't look back on that and think, oh my God, it's like, how cool. I met people that were very kind that we couldn't even communicate with. And
you discovered how much you could rely on yourself. Yeah. And
how cool is that? In the moment, it's going to feel like, which is that crisis.
Yeah, can I do this? Oh my gosh. Yeah. But you know, you just do it. And the nice thing about when it comes to copywriting is that you're not in it alone. You know, if a client asks you a question on a call and you don't know the answer to that call, then you say to your client, you know what, that's a really great question. Let me look into it. I want to do some thinking on that. Let me get back to you on that, which is always a perfectly fine answer. And if you just completely threw you, head over to the Facebook group and be like, guys, they just asked me this. What do you think? You know, it's, you're not in this alone. You're not stuck on an Italian highway. And even then, you weren't in it alone. There were people that you didn't speak the same language that they did, but there were still people there to help you. And
they might have had different motivation. They want this crazy lady off their highway, blocking
crazy
the
American girl off the highway. But yeah, I think in summation, you can do it. You can do it. If it's possible, then it's possible for you to do it. You can do it. You just have to be open to learning, willing to take the steps, and
remember all the people there to support you.
Yeah, it's so
there are a lot of people when you
possible. Don't make your career depend on whether or not you feel confident, or don't make your career depend on, well, I have to avoid failure, which again, not a thing. There's no such thing as failure in a career like this. You can do it. I feel like that's kind of a silly way to end it, but fundamentally, that's what it all comes down to. If you're willing to learn and you're willing to take the action, and yes, there are going to be some times when you don't want to take the action, or you're scared to take the action, or you know you just don't feel like doing it. You know, we all have those days. But if you are willing to take the action anyway, and gently every once in a while get yourself outside of your comfort zone, you'll get to where you want to go. You just have to keep taking that action. Yeah. Okay. So that is the long and short of our spontaneous discussion about confidence and about moving forward and getting to however we define success for ourselves in our copywriting careers. So we hope that was helpful. And we will have another episode that you can find after this one with the with the conference coach that we talked to, who kind of spurred this conversation among us. So definitely be sure to check that out. And also we have a whole bunch of other Great episodes too. So if you haven't checked out any of our past episodes, they're here, right there waiting for you. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyrичwriter.com. We'll see you next time.